Is inflation out of control? And 3 ways to protect your money. Inflation hit a new 40-year high last month. The Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, jumped 9.1% from a year earlier. This index is a measure of how quickly costs are rising and for a broad range of goods and services. How high is 9.1%? It takes only 7 years to slice your wealth in half at 9.1% inflation. 9.1% excludes food that rose 12.2% and energy prices, gasoline, that rose 59.9% due to their high volatility. Eggs are up 32% and ground beef is up over 36% in price year over year. Real wage growth is at the lowest it has been in 60 years. This high inflation of 9.1% that we're all experiencing is an estimate, and a low estimate at that. What is your personal inflation rate? What you buy and consume is different from your neighbors. The difference is even greater when comparing people in different regions. Your number could be higher or it could be lower. Here's one way to check. Add up all your spending from the past 12 months. We'll call this variable A. Then, do the same for the period 12 months before that. We'll call this variable B. Now, subtract the totals and divide by the first amount. This is your personal inflation rate. Now, you have to consider unusual costs during the past 2 time periods. Did you move homes? Did you have a kid? Did you buy a car? The answer is yes to all of these for our family. This is also only helpful if you have an accurate list of transactions. You may have missed transactions in cash, Venmo, crypto, etc. It may not be 100% accurate, but it can be a helpful estimate when looking to the future. Alternatively, you can use a calculator from the New York Times linked in the article below. Here are some ways Americans are trying to combat food inflation at home. On this chart, you'll find that Americans have 4 different approaches. 52% of respondents said that they were taking fewer trips to the grocery store. 45% said that they were shopping generic brands. 40% said they're entertaining at home instead of going out. And 33% said that they were buying in bulk to combat inflation. The general theme here is consolidation, buying larger quantities and fewer trips. Limiting options appears to be a popular method for cutting spending. The other highly volatile cost affecting almost all of us is at the pump. Here are some figures on the percentage of monthly income spent in gasoline. In the state of Tennessee, 5.4% of take-home income is spent on gasoline. In California, it's close at 4.7%. The highest is in Florida at 6%. The lowest is in New York at 1.9%. There are 2 major concentrations here, in the Northeast and the Southeast. I'm from Tennessee, and almost everyone drives here, no matter where you need to get to go. I have a brother who lives in New York, who hasn't owned a car in years. But regardless, it's a memorable increase in cost, but still a relatively small percentage of people's expense compared to food and shelter. What can you do to fight inflation? Number 1, ask for a raise. Average wages have increased and initial claims for unemployment benefits are at an all-time low. Here is a chart showing the rapid decline from pandemic highs across all genders and races. That means fewer layoffs and more hirings. It may be harder to get hired in the near future as many companies lower their expenses to protect profit margins. Number 2 way of fighting inflation, track your spending. If you can't increase your income side, decrease your expense is the next best way. Categorize your spending into 2 categories, starting with essentials like housing, food, transportation, and utilities. You may be able to drive less and crank up the thermostat, but the saving in these categories may be relatively small. Everything else can go in the discretionary category. Here's where you can make some uncomfortable but impactful short-term cuts. Rather than going to the movie theater to see the latest Marvel movie, wait and then stream it a few months later. Do you have a bunch of those streaming service subscriptions? Put those on hold and go outside or get a book from the library. Third, the nuclear route to protecting your money during record inflation: save in a high interest rate I bond or other investment. If you plan to make a big life change or purchase a few years from now, we're talking major purchases, and you have been accumulating cash to do that, you could consider locking that money up in a nearly risk-free investment like a Series 1 bond or I bonds. These bonds pay a rate of return that rises and falls according to the Consumer Price Index. That protects your purchasing power for cash that you've saved up. The initial interest rate on a Series I bond right now is 9.62%. This is different and separate from your emergency savings. Don't touch your emergency fund for something like this. And there is a $10,000 limit per year. Remember, this money will be locked up in this investment for at least a year. You should only be considering it as a part of a bigger strategy with input from your own financial advisor. Alternatively, consider investing in value stocks, commodities, and real estate to hedge against this inflation. Inflation is scary, painful, and discouraging. This is especially true if you are on a fixed income, living paycheck to paycheck, or recently or about to retire. Your actual personal inflation rate could be lower, or unfortunately much likely higher than the 9.1% that was currently reported for June 2022. Being proactive and intentional with your income and spending will put you in the best position to reap the benefits when the economic recovery appears on the horizon. But for now, we will focus on what we can control and wait out the storm together.